Well, good evening, and thank you for joining us on this beautiful, gorgeous Sunday night for our weekly outlook. We're going to look at the week ahead. We're going to look at the current state of the rain, what's coming up with the rain, and also the climate outlook. And also, we're going to touch base and see what's happening with the East Coast lows and what July looks like for an East Coast low fest, or is it going to be a desert? Um, anyway, glad to have your company. We'll look at the chat very soon once we get through some of this information. But let's get into it. So the week that is June 2023. So we're going to look, as I said, look at the week, what we've had so far, get into the rainfall outlook and the climate outlook, and then look at the East Coast low outlook as well. And let's make it happen. All right, so June so far, we have seen max temps being average to below average, which we all pretty much guess that's the case. We all know it's been a bit cool. Some of the places are pretty close to average, and it's probably a bit of urban heat effect going on, and also a bit of moderation of sea surface temperatures, which actually, coincidentally, have also dipped below average for the first time in a long time, and are currently, last I looked, about half a degree or 1 degree below average off the coast too, which is obviously contributing to the colder weather we've been receiving. Those normally those soupy sea surface temperatures, which do moderate the effects of the cold a bit, not there, so helping the cold hang around as well. But it's where the minimum temperatures where we're seeing the massive impacts, and some places, especially in the west and southwest, are at 2 degrees or below 2 degrees below average, which is incredible. Not that I can see. No, there's no record temperatures I can see at this stage, but climate records are pretty hard to see. But it is pretty damn cold at night times. And again, we've had plenty of places below -1 now for a few days in a row, with frost pretty widespread and some fog patches as well. So, and it's going to be the case again tonight, and maybe even a little bit colder tonight, because the moisture that's sort of been hanging around above will clear out as the next system starts to push through, and a bit of dry air gets ingested down ahead of that. A bit more radiational cooling tonight. We could see below -1.5, maybe even -2 in some of those areas, including those at Frost Hollow out Camdenway. So, yes, that'll be lovely to see for those people out there. Oh, no, what's going on there? I didn't get to update that slide. We're going to we'll look at the weather like next week now. Pull that up for you, and we'll go ahead and see what's going on generally. So we're going to look quickly at the just broad scale, because it was something I want to show you, and of course the usual click and roll. Hopefully that's big enough for you. What I want to show you is the actual lack of long wave troughs. Now, long wave troughs, again, as I showed you before, are those quite dominant features where there's a broad area of low pressure that exists for quite over some thousands of kilometers. And you can normally determine them because on the weather map here, or we can see here the winds. You'll see this sort of very long, thin line, very much sort of similar to what you can see here, but more sort of definitely a lot more pronounced. And there's none on the weather map at all. In fact, that's probably the only one I can see is this long here. The rest are all what we call shortwave troughs, and you can see this little sort of wave effect where the curl up is where the trough is. That curling up there is actually quite small. That's quite a decent polar low there, but really no much above it, as you can see. And that is responsible for the real lack of any penetration of anything other than just cold, still dry air. And so there's been no real moisture penetrating at all from the south. There's been no decent cold fronts penetrating from the south. And what we're seeing actually is not cold fronts for this cold air. It's actually just basically the fact that there's been these large highs sat plonked over us for a period of time, and they're in their usual spot, and they've been more of a westerly component than a northwesterly component, and so we're getting this radiational effect, cooling effect at nighttime, when all the warmer air, so to speak, is escaping, and it's not being replaced by warmer air during the day, and it's basically just hanging around, and the cooler air stays around and quite still. And we'll zoom in a little bit. You can see these high pressure systems here, quite dominant. And there's this bit of a trough coming through here. But you can see again, it's not a real decent long wave trough. It's definitely a short, sharp trough. You can see with some impacts. But again, real absence of that really significant troughs backing out, and that's one of the reasons why we're not really getting any much activity happening. And again, Perth has also been copping the brunt of it, which is not unusual given that their winters are normally cold and wet. But when you see Perth copping it, you can guarantee that we're going to be not getting much, and there's just that real balance because the way that the systems are set up, when Perth is copping it, you can see here this high is here, and what it's doing is actually grabbing the colder air from the Antarctica regions and ramming it up through Perth. And of course, the consequence of that is then we get the dead air from that, which is this high pressure system here. So, whenever air rises from the low, it's going to come down again. So, really, this low here, air is rising and it's being dumped behind it. And the air here from this low pressure system here, or this general area of low here, is rising up and then dumping over this in this high pressure system here. And that's basically what's happened. So, we're getting the leftover effects of the systems to our east, and that's the high pressure system just over the Tasman. And because it's really hasn't got a long fetch, and there's quite a lot of dead cold air over the Tasman, and again those lower than average sea surface temperatures as well, it's all contributing to really not much happening in terms of impact for us, other than there's still sort of quiet, dry, cold air, and there's not a lot of wind either. So looking ahead this week, we're going to see a bit of a shift in the pattern for the first time in ages. And it's going to be in the form of this short, sharp, shortwave cold front coming through here. You can see just here the very defined line, and you can see they're heading up towards the southeast, and that's been backed by this quite decent fetch of this high pressure system. You can see how far south it is, and so what it's doing is actually being able to grab air as it comes off the Antarctic continent here. You can see, and it's shunting the air up towards us. So it's going to be quite nippy, this change. But of course, the direction of this change, you can see, is going to be basically from the southwest. So any decent rainfall effects will be filtered out by the Snowy Mountains and the Great Dividing Range for us. But we still should see some showers into Tuesday. So we'll hop into Tuesday now. And you see this change starting to push through, a bit of a milder northwesterly flow ahead of it, although not quite strong and not a very long fetch. So it won't be that mild, but it'll still be like probably 19, I'd say, maybe. Might even get a 20. But that will be the end of it for those couple of days. And I actually might put the temperatures on because winds really don't match. Let's go in. Ooh. You can see here this band of cold air coming up. And again, reasonably decent, but it's not that deep because it's not a long wave trough, it's short wave stuff, so there's really no building up like or damming of the cold air. You can see this high here off Perth, and then into Tuesday afternoon or evening, you can see this change starts to push through. Now, is a bit of disagreements amongst the models about when this actually arrives. Originally there was sort of Tuesday, and now it's looking maybe early Wednesday, but we should start to see some shower activity come through. Not much, I'm sorry to say, but late Wednesday, like Tuesday, early Wednesday, you can see here EC, which is updated along there. You can see that real cloud band. We might actually zoom in now. The good thing is the snow has got a good top up, and you can see this change is delayed. So I think it might even be Wednesday now before we even actually see anything, to be honest. And you can see again that snow up in the Southern Highlands and in the Oberon area, and a lot of the higher peaks in the Great Dividing Range as this change pushes through. And you can see it's going to be quite a strong southwesterly surge, but really not a lot for us. Going to be quite windy though. But that change is really pushed back now to Wednesday, isn't it? Really pushing to Wednesday. Again, you can see snow up to the west of us. It's going to be cold and frigid. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of shower activity again. And that's actually died off since this morning. So it's going to be filtered out by that the western areas of the Blue Mountains, Great Dividing Range. They'll see some good falls. In fact, there's going to be widespread snow. So in some of the areas, as you can see here, so we might actually zoom right in now and forget the broader stuff, because that's basically what's going to be leftovers for this week. Quite a lot of snow here forecast and sleet, and it's quite a substantial change. A lot of lightning off the coast. Unfortunately, not a lot for us, but that's indicative of how cold the air is going to be. And you can see here quite a bit of patches of snow. So unfortunately, it looks like, oh, here we go. Tuesday, EC skipped it. So there is a chance of some showers Tuesday. I thought so. Bit of a cloud band coming through. I'm not sure what happened there. Maybe it hadn't refreshed, but definitely some chances. I always thought there was going to be some, but I was a bit confused of how it disappeared. Bit of a cloud band, but you can see it's not going to hang around long. So Tuesday lunchtime, bit of cloud band coming through, some showers. They'll feel quite cold because they'll drag down some of that colder air upstairs as the change starts to move through. Again, the heaviest falls will be, of course, on the west of the Great Dividing Range, pushing into Wednesday. Plenty of snow, though, into the higher peaks and even a bit further over on there. You can see still nothing really in the Katoomba area because, again, this change is coming from the southwest, and Katoomba really needs to have that sort of southerly component to get any decent stuff there, as we saw at the last snow event. But you can see quite widespread snow there. That's how cold it's going to be. And spread right up through here to Bathurst. And so that air mass coming across the mountains into us is going to be very frigid the next few days. You can see here tops on Thursday of 13 and 14 degrees will show you just how cold it is. And Wednesday, again, 15 and 16, but that won't last very long. I think they may be a bit colder just depending on the timing of this. And into Friday, that dry air is going to hang around. Some showers in a southerly stream. We can see that southerly raging off the coast, and the coast may get some benefit of that. But again, it's going to be cold and windy on the coast. Not so bad inland, but cold still. And then into the weekend, those showers still stay coastal. And that's a bit of an upgrade since this morning. So that's good to see a little bit of showers, but not much. And you can see that wind's kicking back to the southeast as the change moves off. And the next system starts to push through. Again, it does like some showers on the coast through and pushes them into the west on the late in the weekend. So we'll get to see if that actually comes out. Looking ahead, we'll zoom out a bit. And there's a nice cutoff flow here, but you can see it's not that aggressive into the bolt. And then looking ahead to the end of winter, decent high pressure here, but been blocked a bit by a bit of a coastal trough, but there's not much of that coastal trough, unfortunately. There's enough to sort of keep the showers off the coast. Bit of a cutoff low coming through here, so that's something we're going to be watching, but it does dissipate here. But what it does do actually is it actually then forms a coastal trough, and so there should be some decent shower activity into early July. And you can see here how the winds are bending. Yeah, unfortunately, there's going to be nothing much more than that, but there'll be some decent showers. We can see here the high is in a good position for a change, and it's picking up quite a bit of moisture. And you can see the boundary between this sort of cold air and the sort of air above it. And you can see this line of the showers here. And there's some decent moisture going to be pushing in. So if the week after, fingers crossed, should see some good, decent shower activity in a more easterly airstream. But that won't mean it's going to be much milder, unfortunately, because it's going to be tapping into a bit of a cold air left behind, which is going to help actually kick these showers off. And then you can see that trough does hang around most of the week, actually, and then finally starts to clear out into the Tasman. We'll see. The thing I was interested to see is this potential long wave trough here. You can see the first one in a long time. You can see here why I say it's a long wave, but you can see it backs right up to Madagascar. And that's what we'll be watching for any potential weather coming out of that. But they're quite weak, and that's the problem. They've been actually hitting the continent, and because of the higher and the jet stream, it's actually been bumping it down away from us, and so we've been missing out on all that goodness. But we'll see. This one, again, there's not a lot of cloud here. Like, you wouldn't be one of seeing like a bucket load of snow icons around there other than the sort of scattered ones. But there's a decent other trough coming from behind it, so maybe that might be a bit of a shift in the patterns. We will see. But it has been a heck dry July, June, and that's not unreasonable and not unexpected given how wet May was. You know, there is a bit of balance and a bit of equilibrium, and it's sort of like what we're getting now is actually July weather, so it seems to be a bit of a sort of all over the shop in saying that. But that's probably what is lying ahead of us. And we'll go back to what's coming up next. Oh, wrong way. So this is the rainfall to date. And we all know it's been pretty much below average and not good at all. And I don't see much change, to be honest, coming through now. It's the end of end of June, early July. We might see some stuff. We're going to pull up the chat now. We may see some stuff. We will, we'll see. I'm not overly hopeful. But strange things happen. And hello, chat. You're online now. Thank you for joining us. Oh, message retracted. Yeah, the experts have been wrong so far. Let's be honest. They said we're going to have the incredibly warm June, and that little, that little cold thing we got was just a bit of a one-off thing. Baloney. I wouldn't surprise if maxes maybe get to average by the end of June if this little bit of surge of milder weather comes. But again, if this cold change is as rampant as it's making out to be in the models, it's going to be quite a few days of below average colder maximum temperatures as well. So I generally see them struggling to stay average or even getting above to the above average and well above average that the Bureau are predicting for June anyway. We'll see what July comes. But at this stage, we'll look at the climate indicators. There's no real indication that there's any milder weather coming. And in fact, it seems like what I can see in my analysis is that status quo will maintain. And that's a whole lot to do with the sea surface temperatures off in the Tasman too, which are reasonably cool at this stage. And then last time I looked. So I guess we'll see. Yeah, no, Sean. A few weeks of below average temperatures local doesn't got your moment you cook. Oh, okay. Ego camping, I believe, is being sarcastic and facetious. I was like, what? But I get the drift now. Yeah. All right, let's go into. We'll go and have a look now at. Maybe not. Okay, so the rainfall outlook. So this is hot off the press, which is one of the reasons why I was a little bit late, 5 minutes late, because I was waiting for the data process, but it basically has just come in, thank God. The climate data has been incredibly late and laggy lately, so it's been quite poor actually. But thankfully, it actually got its act together today, and so this is as of fresh yesterday. So currently the SOI is sitting at 3.67 for 30 days, which is basically dead on in cool neutral, and has been that way now for a couple of weeks, as you can see on the graph. It has recovered from the end of May, where it was actually into negative territory, which is interesting because that does, as I said a few months ago, it looks like the Enzo is actually recharging for a potential La Nina at the end of this year, although it will not be a long one or a strong one. It'll be probably a short, sharp burst. So I'm not convinced yet at this stage we'll see much influence from it, but we'll see. But there is definitely, I think, in the books, a La Nina coming. And then I think that will discharge the Enzo basin quite significantly. And then we will see what comes in terms of the end of 2026. And I think at this stage it's probably going to be a El Nino. Given that all things being equal, normally we sort of have the reverse pattern, but we'll see. And as I said, the SOI trend has been down. Of course, don't forget that is based on 30 days. So 30 days ago, it was into, if you look into the graph here, it was into that sort of mid-positive territory. So I think that'll start to flatten out to stable very soon because it's been pretty stable here. You can see in terms of basically, since I said, as the end of May, being above zero and pretty much flatlined, as has everything else. The 30-day SOI, as you can see, or so the 90-day SOI has basically pretty much flatlined as well, down from its reasonable sort of strong values in the early April. It's basically been chowing along at that sort of 3 to 4 value for quite a while now. So indicating again that there's no real driving pattern from the Enzo at this stage. And all leftover moisture that we had sort of in that April period where we had a bit of a burst there of rainfall has now been discharged and washed out, and really we're now in the area of SAM, and SAM is what is driving us at the moment, and SAM is consistently positive. And the latest figures today are up to plus 2.6, which is sad that this actually hasn't updated. I'm actually going to grab that offline for you because it's 2.6 today, which is strongly positive now, really starting to get out. And that is going to drive the weather for a few days. Don't forget, in winter, when you get a positive SAM values, you're looking at suppressed rainfall. As you can see here in my little climate center, you can see here, the SAM is actually a drier trend. and 2.63 you can see here in the latest data is quite strongly positive, and it does bounce along quite a lot ever since I've been monitoring it. You can see here the SAM is the greeny color line. You can see up and down, but you notice there's quite a consistent pattern. So you look back in the period of May when we had those record rainfalls, the SAM dropped quite strongly into negative territory, into reasonable negative territory, and that is definitely indicative of a more winterish pattern, because normally autumn, SAM doesn't really have any real effect. But you can see here that had quite a strong effect, and that's what it's sort of says that the patterns are like a month ahead of itself. So we really saw a June pattern in May, and that's reflected in the SAM values as well. So because there was nothing else driving that event that we saw, like the Enzo was dead, it was actually negative. So and IOD was positive, so it's not providing any moisture. So the only real drive you can really point to is the sea surface temperatures, which were used by SAM, and quite clearly there, it was definitely the driver responsible for that event, that coastal trough. And you can see quickly how quickly it rebounded, and we've had that dry spell ever since then. You can see quite clearly it got down again into sort of just briefly into negative territories, but when we had those couple of sort of showery sort of tribes, but nothing much for us. And again, of course, that's indicative also of the wetter patterns into our west too, and those sort of cold fronts that sneak up. So the sort of blips up and down here are quite indicative of shortwave fronts, troughs that I've been talking to you about. And these sort of longer, these big cliff type ones is a long wave trough, and that was definitely what caused the combination. That long wave trough is very much reflective of that active SAM. And again, you can see here these quite strong peaks, and then you can see which is they're quite strong ridges, and then these massive drops, which is these troughs coming through. So you can, if you go back and you can see, you'll be able to pinpoint a trough around there, good cold front around their trough, and you can see sort of around here we had that colder outbreak again only like a week or so, 10 days ago. We don't get much out of it, of course, because of the drying effect, but the Western Blue Mountains, the great up Great Dividing Range, that stuff do definitely get better. So you can see these little short, sharp ups and downs. But you can see this gradual rise again out of that way up into the positive territory, and again, of course, that will go up to 2.6, which is up here, which is way up above that. And interesting. I don't know why it says positive SAM. Positive SAM is 1, not way up there, so I'm not sure what's going on there. Better check that, legend. And you can see otherwise, IOD is the purple line, flat line, like my heart after a couple of drinks. And you can see the SCI, which is our Southern Climate Index, which is the thing I've developed, quite actually accurately maps the activity, and it's actually working out really quite strongly. And you can see here, that wet period in April we had strongly there, and you can see again the effects of that area in trough. You can see how strongly the SCI got up into almost plus 20 for a monthly value, which is really, that's actually says extreme wet, and we had extreme wet, and really happily actually how it's actually mapping out. And of course you can see here it then plummets into these territories, and this is sort of like average to low to moderate suppressed. And you can see here it's down into the drier, tending down into very dry and extreme dry, and extreme dry actually kicks in I think at 10 or 9 at the SI, and the SCI this afternoon was 10. So you can see it's almost in that extreme dry category, and it's not so unsurprising how dry it's been, to be honest. And again, that is not, it's not catching us unawares too. As I said, you got to balance out what happened in May. May was extremely wet, so got to bring balance to the force, and that's what it's doing at the moment. Otherwise, everything else is pretty flatlined actually. But so this week again, even though there's some showers coming through, it does say it's drier all around. Unfortunately, those changes will be filtered out by the Blue Mountains and Great Dividing Range. We won't see much of them. Even again, that rain on Tuesday, I don't expect much out of it. It'll be cold, and it'll probably be, it'd be nice when it does come, but it won't be maybe a mil, maybe 2 mils, maybe 3 mils max. So And the trend, of course, of the SCI has been down quite significantly. No surprises there, given this time of year. Most climate drivers are, as I said, responsive to the SAM, what the SAM does, bounce around. But generally speaking, since that great peak back in mid-May, it has been a downward progression significantly. And I don't expect that to change just yet, although there is some indication that we may see a kick up in July. So fingers crossed for that. But again, the season outlook at this stage is still drier. And we'll see what the next 2 weeks goes in terms of that. But looking at the overall pictures and what's happening down to our south over Antarctica, there's not a lot stirring at the moment. It says to me it's going to actually massively kick the sand back into negative territory, which is where we really want to see it for this time of year, to allow those cold fronts to sort of penetrate more. Actually, what it does is actually pushes the cold fronts down to the south and allows those more easterly surges of moisture, which is what gives us decent rain events. The fronts moving further north is great for southern Australia and the snowies, of course, because it then allows that really deep cold air to come through with some southern moisture. As I said, and I've said a number of times, that's not much good for us because it actually does get filtered out by the Blue Mountains and we miss out. And that is the breaks for us in most winter events, unfortunately. But and just one thing too, there's been some pretty record cold along the Great Dividing Range, including like Goulburn, and that was like -10 or something like that. We've seen some significant cold temperatures. Again, a lot of that's due to radiational cooling. The sky's clear. There's not much humidity at all. I saw there was dew points of -20s and above today, and I saw some ridiculous carry on about, oh my god, record territory for -20s. It's a meaningless number. All it tells you about is just how dry the air is. That's all it means. Like, if you're going to cry about -26 dew points, big deal. It just means that you got to get up to -26 temperatures before you start to get some action from moisture. Big deal. Temperatures itself on the ground and that sort of stuff are what relevant. Like dew points, nah. If you were to look at a cross section of the atmosphere above us, above that -26, you'll find that there's actually some reasonable moisture above that, which is basically being trapped by some dry air below it. It's horses for courses, but like to crow on about a minus. Oh my god, almost record -626 dew point is just meaningless drivel. It's just about clickbait and engagement farming, and really has zero meaning for anybody in terms of relevance for their day-to-day lives, etc. Oh, get off. There's my bit of a rant for today. All right, so looking ahead, as I said, going to be unfortunately dry. Now let's have a look at what our ECR outlooks are, and you can probably guess what they're going to be like in terms of going ahead. Low chance for next to the end of June, as you can see. Basically nothing. There's a little bit of vorticity coming through that I'm watching, but it looks like it just gets whacked around like it happened the other day. But it's still keeping an eye on it because strange things happen. But with the sea surface temperatures the way they are as well, and struggling, there's really nothing there for any sort of upper cold pools to tap into anyway. So I would say low to very low at this stage, and just dominant high pressure, as you can see. Looking at July now. Why does it skip 2 slides? Stupid machine. Okay, July. Again, like I've gone a moderate outlook because there is quite a few troughs bobbling around, especially on the longer term models, especially from mid-July onwards. At this stage, I wouldn't think you see anything in early July, but stranger things have happened. But there's no real, as I said, no real indicators that there's anything bubbling away. The SAM is, strongly positive, and it'll bounce around a bit as well. But the general direction is positive, which is not good for us in terms of that sort of behaviour. Although there is some evidence that say that sometimes you can get a decent ECL with a positive SAM, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Especially with their sea surface temperatures the way they are, nothing really there. But again, from mid-July onwards, end of July, and there's a couple of flags there that say that the ingredients are starting to, to get back in there, and there's a bit of a increase in the risk. So we'll keep an eye, and we'll obviously keep you updated for that. But unfortunately, there is really nothing. There's nothing on the horizon in terms of weather, other than this dry cold front coming through. I mean, there's not even any, those horrendous westerlies or we sometimes get, can get, which are boring, but at least there's something to talk about. And that's it. Not much happening in terms of that. Again, tonight we're looking at pretty cold, as I said before, down into the negatives in the west and southwest and northwest again, and frost pretty widespread because that little bit of northeasterly component we've had today, a bit of moisture coming in at the surface. Not a lot, but enough to condense as that radiational cooling happens and it finds its nearest, darkest piece of grass or earth or car or whatever it might be to cling to and condense, and then those crispy temperatures will rapidly turn that into cute little ice crystals, and that's about all we're going to see in terms of anything exciting. All right, so let's go into your questions. I'm gonna have to work out how to get this in terms of, that was one of the other things, like try and have the pop-out chat with this so we can see you guys and have this going as well. Doesn't work quite effectively, so anyway, I'll work that out. Alrighty, what's going on with the chat here? Freezing, ice and windscreen. Yep. Don't use too late. Yep. Mr. Dine, hello. Smoke up and running, that sounds nice. Loads of clouds here at the moment. Yep, there was some high cloud before, as I said. Hello, Ash, lovely to see you. Dealing with a feral 4-year-old. That's okay. Equivalent Black Nor'easter. I wish we have that. We'll swap you for that. What point in winter does the ECL risk cease? Really not until August, even September, early September. So don't worry about that because the cold pools are still quite mobile until then, until you're looking into mid-spring. So don't stress about those disappearing just yet. And, there's still plenty of opportunity. Well, I shouldn't say plenty of opportunity because it sounds that might be annoy some people who don't like them. But, there is opportunity for those still to come. But, as I said, the climate indicators at this stage are not looking very conducive to anything. That's the thing I wanted to show you. I'll just actually I'll bring this back and I'll show you something. If you remember last year, we were plagued by sudden stratospheric warming events quite significantly. Not even a sign of those at the moment. But what we do have, and I'll show you these, and that's one of the reasons why there's been very few long wave troughs and very few cold pools actually detaching and racing up from Antarctica to really give us anything decent. And you wait to see just how strong the Arctic circulation polar vortex is. It is massively strong. Look at that. It is fat. And it is definitely not a worry. You can see here, normally these are sort of these little snippets here where we look to see that a bit of cold air gets actually sort of shredded or torn off the Arctic, the polar vortex here, which is what can give us some weather. You can see here it's very stable, very flat, and look how strong the winds are. There's 211 knots there. I saw one for 263 knots or something there this morning, or that might have updated, but 220 knots is fairly racing along, and that just shows you how strong that is. And of course, when you've got those winds that strong, it's not letting any cold air escape from the Antarctic not even on the right day. I'm at the end here. Go back to here might be helpful, mightn't it? So, again, that just proves my point. You look into this week, for example, you can see it's just one smooth, massive donut, and you can see as a consequence, they're very strong upper highs as well as associated with that, this is why we're getting this massive dry air and this just very still conditions. Look at the strength of that high. It's just nothing allowed. And I know this is way up in the atmosphere, but this is what really drives us in winter, these feral cells, which is what this is attached with. And you can see, again, just a donut. There's really nothing shearing off that. And you can see what has happened there. That high actually moves to the west, upper high, and that allows at least some of this polar air you can see here to sneak up across us for this week, which is what, this is feeding this trough. And again, the upper high starts to build again during that week, and then it starts to snake its way again to the west, and you can see things start to sort of ease off again. But pretty, pretty savage, strong upper vortex. This is looking good here, but of course it's not near us. It's going to peak. Look at that next high coming. Really just strong. And this is what we look for here. You can see this where it actually starts to break apart, and you can see snippets of the cold air start to get shorn off and thrown to the north. So if we're going to see the temperature here, and then you can see quite clearly. So again, that's what's helping fuel this change this week. But then it goes back to being quite flat. You can see it peaks, disappears, stays quite cold, and goes back to, this really, massive cold air mass, -82, all concentrated around the South Pole, right over Antarctica, and kept in line by that incredibly strong polar vortex, incredibly strong, and bang. But you can see what I was talking about here. So there's how that a piece of it's being shorn off and snatched away and captured by the westerlies up, and then it'll be going across, and that'll actually create weather. But you can see it's well to the east of us, nothing coming our way. So and you look here, it's just flat right across, even in South America. There's nothing going on whatsoever, which is actually quite unusual. Normally you see like a slither of this, like maybe two of this, and it's one of the things you might see people commentate every now and then about the the long wave troughs, and there's 2 or 3 active long wave troughs, and this is what you'll look for. You see there's probably 1 at the moment, and that's about it, which is again pretty unusual. And as we push into next week, you can see not much else happening. But then we get this part here again, which is where those showers start to come back, and you can see why this bit of a trough in the way up the atmosphere starts to build. And it does start to shear off a little bit just above across. So that will help obviously feed those showers and keep the high well to the west this time. You can see it's way away from us. And that's obviously going to allow those showers to build for the following week into early July, which is a better situation. And then you can see that ridge starting to build towards the end of that period here. Ridge starting to build here. And then it'll sort of start, I imagine it'll start to fine up after that. But yeah, so that was, just want to bring that up and show you, it's one of the reasons what is driving our weather at the moment is the polar vortex is incredibly strong. And then these upper highs, which are driving it. So if I was to change the layers now, and we'll go down to the jet stream, about 9 kilometers up, you can see the consequence of that is that the polar vortex is just reinforcing that subtropical jet stream, which is why we're having just fine, clear, nothing days. You can see here it's just blocking anything getting north. You can see there's quite a strong little shortwave polar trough here. Hits that jet stream, bang, goes nowhere, gets pushed back down again. And that's basically what's happening. If I was to sort of go through here, you'll see there's trough, bang, jet stream, bang. And that's why, again, that's why it's going to be cold and nasty, dry air for the end of this week. You can see the interaction of that jet stream. Again, the troughs hitting the jet stream, not much happening. And then we move into the weekend, and you start to see a bit of a change as the jet starts to split. And that's one of the things I was talking to you about the other day, about when you look out for the potential for East Coast low developments, when these jets split. So you can see the subtropical jet now splits, goes north, the polar jet here splits. And then you get, this is where the chance for East Coast low development, but there's nothing really coming through that's going to unfortunately encourage it. But it does help for those showers coming through in early next week. So fingers crossed that this sort of situation can actually help. So you can cut a bit of a cutoff low there in those mid levels, but you can see the result of it. Just really not much happening for us. And you can see just Tasman low away it goes. But another split jet coming from behind, which is what I was saying before. Like it seems to be a bit of an active, big split jet here. You can see the one jet stream there, one jet stream there. That's the sort of activity that I'm watching very closely about, because that can lead to East Coast low development if everything else does kick into gear. So again, some signs there, but nothing from behind it. This is what you're looking at here. Potentially to kick stuff up. You can see nothing here for us. Alrighty, that is about the end of it. I don't think there's much more to discover. Chat, anybody else? Come late, Missed everything, huh? No, don't worry about it. It's all in there. You can watch it a bit later. How's the app going? Next question. I told you it's going to take a while. It's a lot of coding going very slow. I've got the data streams ready to go, which is good. It's just now about actually getting the coding side of things for the front end of the. It's very problematic and it's very, very hard work. Anyway, that was my yesterday, banging my head against the wall. Coding. Wish I had some studies in coding, but anyway. 1 minute delay. Oh, okay, it's not too bad. A bit laggy than the other day, but it's not too bad. 5-10 seconds. I guess pretty. Yeah, it must be the link again. I'm seeing it pretty quickly. 5-10 seconds. On phone, YouTube TV. Okay, Starlink. Okay. Alrighty, well, that's pretty about it for now. I haven't got much else to jab about. It's pretty damn quiet. Obviously, we'll have some updates for you during the week, and I'll have an update this week. Fingers crossed about the damn app. It's not far away. Like it's actually picking up data. It's just about getting some stuff tweaked. I don't even want to show too much of it yet until I pretty it up because it's so problematic. Oh my god, it's just been driving me nuts. Not having a lot of time to devote that need to it. I really need to probably take a week off work, to be honest, and I obviously can't afford that with the way things are going at the moment. So I'll just keep plugging away. But hopefully we'll have something for testing anyway by the end of June. So that's next week, early next week. No, next week, sorry, the week after. And then we'll go from there. Again, if you want to participate, you've got to send me through your coords. So Mr. Callahan, if he's listening or he's not, he didn't send me anything through. But anyway, I managed to find freshwater. It's got the main street of freshwater. So too bad you won't get it to your doorstep. But it is what it is. Anyway, I will say good evening for you. Thank you so much for your company, and have an awesome evening. I'll be chatting, no doubt, throughout the week. New blog post out tomorrow. Again, there's been not much to say, so that's why there's been no much blog post coming out, because really what is to talk about? Fine sunny days, but we'll have, obviously, as the end of June comes up, more to look at as in terms of what next month holds in terms of rainfall. But as I said early on, it's looking dry, unfortunately, at this stage for July. But we'll see. The SAM being that strongly positive, not good signs for us. We want to go into negative, and when we see a negative SAM and a good strong negative SAM, that allows that easterly moisture to penetrate, which is good for us for rain events. Even just a neutral SAM is not too bad for fronts to allow penetration. But yeah, strongly positive the way it is. No chance. All right, have a good evening. Thank you for your company. As we always say to each other, be kind to each other. Have a great week, and we'll be chatting. And I'll leave you with the dulcet tones of Sean's favourite music. Good night now. Maybe not. Maybe he's gonna. Now here it is. Ciao.